Now, I was a massive fan of the Artemis Fowl books as a kid. After getting the first one when I was 11, I read them all throughout my teenage years, so it seemed only natural that I be the one to review this film. Now I kind of wish I hadn't. 2001's Artemis Fowl tells the story of Artemis, a boy genius and the latest in an ancient family of master criminals. Following the mysterious disappearance of his father, Artemis is now the man of the house and intent on bringing fortune to his family by any criminal enterprise he can manage. After discovering the existence of the fairy race who now live underground in a wealthy and technologically advanced society, Artemis hatches a plan to kidnap a fairy and hold them to ransom for an enormous amount of gold. The fairy he kidnaps is one Captain Holly Short, a hot-headed young cop and the first female captain in the fairy realm's lower elements police. When Holly's commander and fellow officers of the LEP recon unit come above ground to try and negotiate for her release, Artemis' ruthless plan is put to the test and it takes all of his cunning skill to escape alive. Author Owen Colfer called his book Die Hard with Fairies, and whilst it introduces an imaginative world of fairies, magic and futuristic tech, it also plays on many well-known cop comedy tropes. Artemis is supported by his man-mountain master killer bodyguard Butler. Holly is aided by Foley, an IT nerd centaur who spends more time researching conspiracy theories and looking up cat videos than he does on police work. He also constantly butts heads with her commanding officer Julius Root, the stereotypical angry, cigar-smoking, buzz-cut-having police boss. He's extremely hard on her. Holly is frequently told that having a female in the unit is a big risk. The band of characters is rounded out by Mulch Diggums, a kleptomaniac dwarf whose allegiances are constantly changing. Artemis Fowl the movie casts newcomers Ferdia Shaw and Lara McDonnell as Artemis and Holly respectively. Disney favourite Josh Gad as Mulch Diggums. Game of Thrones star Nonso Anosi as Butler. Irish A-lister Colin Farrell as Artemis Senior, and most bizarrely, Dame Judi Dench as a gender-swapped Commander Root. Now the movie makes some massive plot changes from the books, some of which were immediately obvious from the first trailer. The casting of Judi Dench as the police chief was a particular disappointment, as it makes it immediately clear that Holly's fight against the patriarchy would not be a feature of this story. The second is that it is not Artemis who discovers the fairies, but rather his father, Fowl Senior, who has been taken from the second book, Artemis Fowl and the Arctic Incident, though he's portrayed much differently. The movie begins with Artemis Fowl Senior being kidnapped after stealing a powerful fairy weapon. Artemis Jr. finds out about the fairy world from his father's diary and begins his own plot only as a means to rescue him. The fact that Artemis and his family are not actually criminals, but are rather just trying to save each other and somehow the world in this story, is what ruins it. The joy of the books is that Artemis is a bad guy. He is cold, ruthless, cunning, and spends a great deal of time exploiting others. He's a villain at his very worst and an anti-hero at best. The hero of our story is meant to be Holly Short, who over the course of many adventures does eventually teach Artemis to be a better person. It very much feels that Disney were afraid to make a kid the bad guy, and in doing so have robbed the audience of what would have been a unique and exciting perspective. So, might you enjoy this film if you haven't read the books? Fortunately, the answer is no. A lemon from start to finish, Artemis Fowl the movie suffers from unfunny jokes, a confusing plot and underutilised characters. Whilst Judi Dench appears to be the only cast member making any attempt at acting, the rest of them deliver their lines as if they're seeing them at a table read for the first time. It has an uninspired villain who's been taken from the books but given absolutely no characterisation or motive. It hints at fairy folklore and magic without ever explaining how any of it works, and fails to delve even slightly into the magical world. Crucially, whilst we're frequently told that Artemis is a genius, we never actually see any evidence of this brilliance in the film. Whilst book Artemis is a master tactician who can crack codes, hijack weapons and invents brilliant tech, film Artemis seems to be bumbling his way through from start to finish. At a running time of 1 hour 35 minutes, Disney have attempted to cram too many ideas into this short film. Its lengthy exposition robs us of the time to get to know and love what should be a cast of quirky, fun characters. I'm sad to say that Artemis Fowl joins Eragon and Percy Jackson in the list of terrible young adult adaptations that we wish they'd never made. If you've enjoyed this massively shortened rant about this film from my original 20 minutes, please consider liking, subscribing, joining us on social media for all our further chats on We Talk Film. Bye!